On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk the top voice commands, CEDIA's CIT earns ANSI accreditation, and Staub is acquired by Snap AV. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 312, No Coincidences.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Middle Atlantic, what great systems are built on, and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jason Knott. He's the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then we have the one and only Mitchell Klein. He's the Director of Alliances Strategy for Z-Wave Alliance. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year or belated New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. All that fun stuff. Gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro and Alex Capisalantra, who's a good friend of the show. And we kind of teased this last week, so if you haven't listened to last week's, go back and listen to that, then listen to this week. The top 10 smart home commands for 2021. Through this article, Alex goes through to talk about, not only list, but talk about the 10 most popular commands on the Josh AI platform. And there were a couple of surprising ones, including the manner in which people are using watch Apple TV opposed to just not watch Netflix, and the use of the fan, which again Alex touched on a little bit last week. Jason, I want to start with you on this. How do we leverage, like, this is good information. It's great to look at and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. I get why people are using this to turn on music or turn on lights or close shades. How do we go about utilizing this information or making actual use of it beyond just, again, common info to including your sales pitch? Hey, all our other customers use it like this.
So if I could read between the lines for just a second on this list, I thought it was very interesting, and I think this is something that integrators can really take advantage of, is, again, kind of going through the list, turn on, off lights. I think just for the people who haven't read the story, what time is it? Good night, good morning. Turn on, off TV, close the shades, watch Apple TV. What's the weather? Turn on, off fan. But then one of the one that was the most telling to me was that one of them is only turn off the music or stop the music. There's not turn on the music. And to me, what that tells me is that people still need to utilize, to find their song that they want to say. It's either too difficult to say it, this particular song that they want to play, or they're really comfortable using an interface to find that song that they want to play to turn on. Because there was nothing about turning on the music in this top 10 list, only turning it off.
Well, and if I can jump in for 1 second, what I wonder about, because this is top 10, the music you're going to ask it to play is going to be different than the music Mitch is going to ask it to play, which is different than the music I'm going to ask it to play, which is different than what my kids are going to ask it to play, which, for your information, is still Christmas carols. It's driving me mad.
Better than Baby Shark, I guess.
That is true.
Exactly. So, to me, it shows me that you still need that secondary, if you want to call, I don't know if you want to call the voice a primary interface or you want to call it a secondary interface, but to me, you're still going to need another interface. Your point being that you think they're making that as a voice command for a particular song, and that's why it's not showing up?
I'm just saying we don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. Yeah, no, I read that as that it's just easier to tell it to turn off, and it's easier to do some other mechanism to turn it on, to find that song that you want to play. So that was kind of my interesting point, that I think the voice control is awesome. We know it's growing like crazy. It's, the data that we've done showing that every year it's doing a double-digit growth in terms of its penetration, in terms of smart home deployments being done by professional integrators. I love what Josh AI is doing in terms of differentiating itself from Amazon and from Google. And so for integrators, I think this is a valuable list to look at and say, these are the common things that you can use, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, in your home, and this is how this system is going to be used. I know the one thing that's on here that we use ours for at our home that I was surprised wasn't on there was to do a timer. My wife hasn't turned the timer on in the oven in years. It's all done through voice control. She have 3, 4, 5 different timers going based upon what she's got in the microwave, what she's got in the toaster oven, what she's got on the stove top, what she's got in the oven. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Mitch, when you see this, kind of to Jason's point, is this showing us that it's still voice is still mainly used for those quick commands and not necessarily used for those complex, hey, I want to find this album by this artist, and not the main one, but the acoustic version that was released 5 years later?
Yeah, it's interesting to align what we saw from Josh.ai and then read about what, say, Mrs. A is saying as well. They're pretty well aligned, which is a bit of a surprise to me. To Jason's point, the one that we use all the time isn't even on that, and that is like, hey, Mrs. A, add this to my shopping list, right? Which, to me, that was what broke ground in my family that enabled me to actually put voice control, because up to that point, it was like, we don't want it, get rid of it. But I think you're right. The more complex commands won't show up as a top 10 because they're more complex. Maybe if we asked, Alex to give us the top 100, we might see some things that can be a bit more specific than the general commands which we're seeing in that list. Again, I was not surprised by any except number 10, which was the Apple one.
Really?
I was surprised that came in the top 10, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Why?
I did not realize that Apple was popular enough, within the community, the Josh community, to be in the top 10. That's all. I thought it would have been Netflix or Paramount or Disney Plus or HBO. I can go on and on, as you can tell. Yeah. But that Apple was there is kind of interesting.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.